Boundaries, 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 right? That toothless advice that is often thrown out there as an easy fix, a necessary fix, and healthy assertiveness. The belief is that if you have or are able to set so-called boundaries, then that shows the world that you are not a dreaded codependent, that you are able to make your needs known. Boundaries are tossed around as the fix to everything except your clogged kitchen drain. And who knows, maybe you can even set a boundary, probably better set a boundary there than with someone who is narcissistic. Now, boundaries are not that simple for a lot of reasons. First of all, in the world I work in, helping people through narcissistic and antagonistic relationships, they don't work. So unless you enjoy a fight or you can really tune them out, then setting boundaries will result in being labeled and called selfish, greedy, needy, demanding, ungrateful, etc., on and on. You know the drill if you've ever tried. You may even be called narcissistic or selfish for setting a boundary, but you were also called codependent for not setting a boundary, so you really can't win. Second of all, if a person grew up in a family system that was characterized by narcissism or has a history of trauma or disruptions in attachment, then setting boundaries is not only something you never got to learn, but even the idea of even considering setting a boundary can feel like it would be like complete destruction of your world, that you will lose people you love, you will be shut down, you will be unsafe. To set a boundary can feel so unsettling in our bodies that we feel like if we do it, it could destroy us. So many people often don't. The abandonment of ourselves and the blurring of the self and the other that can happen as a result of relational trauma can make boundary setting feel completely foreign. And once again, if you have this history and you are in a narcissistic relationship, it will also be met with rage, anger, the silent treatment, abandonment, and the long list of criticisms and indictments that I've already mentioned and shared. You're how dare you, you ungrateful, rigid, difficult, demanding person. And then survivors feel ashamed. They're told by people who don't understand narcissistic relationships, well, you need to set a boundary with them. Really? Do I? The guidance to set boundaries is tossed out so simplistically. It's like on those little 5 things you can do. Like, you really just need to drink more water. That people who struggle with setting boundaries actually wonder if there's something wrong with them. Everyone's telling me to set boundaries, so setting boundaries must be a thing that everyone does. So it must be kind of easy, so I can't do it. Then there's something wrong with me. I've no doubt people set boundaries and set them successfully. They're just not doing it in their narcissistic, antagonistic, and psychologically unsafe relationships. And remember that boundaries are complicated. Our own histories of relational trauma, frankly, any kind of trauma, can mean that those involuntary trauma responses, such as fawning to feel safe, means that setting a boundary simply doesn't feel safe. And then there is everyone else in this whole boundaries mess. You are told to set boundaries by the very same people who enable the narcissistic people in your lives. So the enablers are the ones telling you to set boundaries. This gets to be a tricky piece because if you do set boundaries in a real and meaningful way, that very same chorus of voices who may say to you, well, if they're bothering you so much, why don't you just set a boundary with them? And when you finally do attempt to set a boundary, you're actually even told by these enablers that you're being punitive or difficult. It's the ultimate double bind. It's a catch-22. Set them, and you're being a jerk. Don't set them, and you're being a doormat. Imagine that every time you go to a family dinner or family event, you have to face the guilting, the insults, the minimizing, the devaluing, and the all-around ick of a narcissistic parent. You try it all with them, and then one day, you finally get what it is. You're like, okay, this is not changing. I get the whole pattern. You say, okay, I'm going to disengage. And so then you do. And other folks, in some cases, the very ones who told you to set boundaries with your difficult parent, they turn around and they call you difficult. And they may even tell you, but boy, you're being punitive when you set boundaries. You do the thing they told you to do, and now you're being punitive. Yeah. So remember with these relationships, it's a game of whack-a-mole, right? You hit the one mole, the other one pops out. Once you don't go along with what the narcissistic person wants, other people are going to have to put up with that narcissistic person's tantrums, and kind of becomes their problem because you've disengaged. So there's that part. So as long as you were the person who was devoting yourself to managing the narcissistic person's moods, they may have become less of someone else's problem. Well, your boundary has made them someone else's problem. Also, when people say set boundaries with the narcissistic person, I don't think they literally mean for you to put the line in the sand, which is actually what setting a boundary would be. But I honestly think telling you to set boundaries is a throwaway line that blames you for someone else's difficult behavior. So when you set the boundary, and it can be big, I am setting the boundary. I said, if someone behaved like this last time, I'm not going to go to the family function again, or I'm not going to turn my schedule around for them again, or I'm not going to sit here and listen to them say or do stuff that makes me and other people uncomfortable. Well, then you're being punitive. This tactic of calling someone punitive for setting a boundary in a narcissistic relationship, sadly, it works. And it often results in people pulling back on their boundaries with narcissistic people. Because we are not robots, right? We have histories and fears and wounds, because most survivors feel so bad about setting a boundary and wonder if they're going too far, or if they're bad people, or if they're being unreasonable, or they're being selfish and ungrateful, and all the stuff the narcissistic person tells them that they are being. That when they are told, when you finally set the boundary, and you're told that your boundary is punitive or cruel or unreasonable by other people, the enablers, the family members, the flying monkeys, they may wonder, maybe my boundary was too much. Maybe I am being too much, because it's hard to calibrate that. The key to any form of boundary setting, if you even want to call it that, in a narcissistic relationship, is that number one, you make your boundary setting an inside job, and you set your own internal benchmarks. You might say, okay, if they say this or they go there, I am definitely going to disengage and go into another room, that sort of thing. But you never draw attention to the boundary, not with them and not with anyone else. It's an inside job. You respond internally. People like having this shamey, again, throwaway guidance of, you just need to set a boundary with them. But nobody else wants to be inconvenienced by your boundary setting, nor do they want to have their world thrown off by it. Somehow they magically expect you to show up at the family wedding or whatever the family event is and set a boundary once you are there. Again, if you do that, then you're being difficult and ruining the day, and should just go along, because after all, you're the one who decided to come. And if you don't come, well, then you're being punitive. So it's really a put up or shut up, or we're going to just call you a punitive, mean person. You cannot win. You cannot win with narcissistic folks, and you cannot win with their enablers, who are often complicit in maintaining these toxic dynamics. They're not doing it necessarily to be mean, but they're doing it to maintain the status quo, which helps them feel safe, but for some reason you're the worthy sacrifice. Setting boundaries is not going to change narcissistic behavior. It's a big error and it's a big misassumption. Narcissistic folks are not going to respect any boundaries you assign. They will weaponize your boundaries. They may even use your boundaries to learn about the things that are the most problematic for you in the relationship. You wouldn't be setting a boundary on it if it wasn't affecting you. And now that they know that you're trying to set a boundary, they're like, whoa, now I got this. And they're going to use that against you in the future. So there's a danger in setting these boundaries. The greatest so-called boundary in a narcissistic relationship, folks, I'm going to tell you, is to see the relationship realistically. To be fully aware of what it is, the patterns, how everything's going to go down. And even the unpredictability in one of these relationships is predictable. For example, just when you pull away or disengage, that's when a narcissistic person may play the victim, lay on the guilt, or just be nice. You have to go into every one of these interactions with your eyes wide open, realistically, radically accepting, and grounded. And when someone tells you to set boundaries to manage these difficult dynamics, it actually tells you more about the person giving you this wacky advice and their lack of awareness than it does about your behavior in the relationship. And when folks conveniently write your boundaries off as being difficult or punitive, the very people who shamed you for not setting those boundaries, remember, that's a way for them to maintain a status quo that works for them, even if it hurts you. So boundaries, inside job. Thanks again.